People said the town was quiet, the kind of place where drama dies before it starts. But that lie shattered the moment a shaking little girl burst through the hospital doors, eyes wide with terror, whispering to anyone who would listen that her mother was being kept outside by men who weren't supposed to be there. No one moved. No one dared. Until the sound of engines rolled in like thunder and the Hells Angels stepped into a story that would change all of them forever. The girl at the door. The automatic doors hissed open at Mercy Ridge Hospital, and a little girl stumbled in, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit by its ear. Her name was Maddie. 7 years old. Trembling like a leaf in a storm she never asked for. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, but what hit harder than the crying were her words. "They won't let my mommy in. Those men won't let her in the hospital." The nurses froze. Maddie pointed outside with a tiny, shaking finger. Through the hospital's glass front, silhouettes of 3 large men stood planted at the entrance like gatekeepers who didn't belong there. They weren't hospital security. They weren't police. They were something else entirely, and the tension in the room pressed like a weight on everyone's chest. A young nurse named Leah knelt in front of Maddie. She had that soft voice people trusted, even in moments like this. "Sweetheart, who are those men? Did they say why they stopped your mom?" Maddie shook her head so hard her braids whipped her shoulders. "They said only special people can go in. Mommy tried to tell them she needed help. She can't breathe good. She's sick." But they kept pushing her back. They laughed. Lee's stomach twisted. Not because of danger, but because the whole thing felt wrong down to the bone. A sick woman, blocked from the emergency room by strangers? Why? And why wasn't security doing anything? Leah glanced at the security desk. Empty. The shift change had been delayed because of some system glitch. Perfect timing for chaos. Leah stood up, heart hammering, and headed toward the entrance. But the moment she got close, the tallest of the men stepped forward. He wasn't holding a weapon, but the air around him felt like one. Thick. Intentional. "Hospital's closed," he said in a gravelly voice. "Come back later." "It's an emergency," Leah tried. "You can't deny access." He smirked. "I can deny whatever I want today." Behind him, through the tinted glass, Leah saw Maddie's mother. Pale. Leaning on the building's pillar. Struggling for breath. It didn't take a doctor to know this was bad. Lee's voice rose. "Move. Right now." But the men didn't flinch. Maddie wrapped her little arms around Lee's leg. "Please help my mommy. Please." Leah reached for her phone to call the police, but before the first ring even finished, something unexpected rolled into the parking lot. Engines. Not one. Not two. Dozens. The ground almost vibrated. Heads turned. People inside the hospital walked toward the windows, drawn to the sound like startled birds. Motorcycles poured into the lot in a perfectly controlled wave. Black and chrome. Big, loud, and impossible to ignore. Their jackets carried the unmistakable flaming skull emblem. Hell's Angels. The men blocking the entrance stiffened. One even cursed under his breath. At the front of the pack was a man known as Bear. A wall of muscle with a beard that looked carved from a mountain and eyes that saw more than most people wished he would. But Maddie didn't know him. Not personally. She only knew what she had been told her whole life: the Hells Angels were the people who looked scary but showed up when it mattered. And apparently, they mattered today. Bear killed the engine, swung one leg over the bike, and walked toward Maddie. Not toward the guards. Not toward Leah. Toward the tiny crying girl who stood like the last witness to something awful. "You all right, little one?" he asked gently. "Why the tears?" Maddie gulped and pointed at the men. "Those guys won't let my mommy in. She's sick. Really sick." Bear looked from the child, to the men, then back to the child. And something in his jaw tightened. Stay with the nurse, he said. He cracked his knuckles. And the parking lot went dead quiet. When the angels stood up, Bear walked toward the blocked hospital entrance with a steady calm that made the three men shrink even before he spoke. Behind him, more angels dismounted. They didn't need to be told anything. They saw the scene. They saw the sick woman leaning on the wall. They saw the men who thought they could play gatekeeper on a hospital doorstep. One of the troublemakers stepped forward. You can't come in here. Private matter. Bear's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Everything at a hospital is a public matter. Move. The man scoffed. Why do you care, biker? Bear leaned in until they were nearly nose to nose. Because a little girl had to beg strangers for help. And because nobody gets between a mother and the care she needs. Not on my watch. The angels behind him spread out, forming a human wall that made the three men look small and unbelievably foolish. The tallest of the men reached for something inside his jacket. Leah gasped. Maddie whimpered into her rabbit. But Bear grabbed the man's wrist before anything could happen and twisted until the guy winced in pain. Bad move. The object clattered to the ground. Not a gun. Not a knife. A cheap walkie-talkie. Leah blinked. Who are you? Why are you blocking patients? The tall man struggled in Bear's grip. We're contractors. Hired to secure the entrance during the outage. Didn't think anyone would resist. Bear shoved him back. You weren't hired to play army. You were hired to keep peace. Not torture a sick woman. At that moment, Maddie's mother collapsed to her knees. Leah rushed to her, yelling for a stretcher. The angels moved instantly, some clearing the path, others flagging down EMS inside the building. Bear knelt beside Maddie's mother. She looked up at him with glazed eyes. Thank you, she whispered. He shook his head softly. Thank your daughter. She fought for you. The EMTs lifted her onto a stretcher and rushed her inside. Maddie clung to her hand until the last second, whispering, Mommy, you're gonna be okay. I promise. Once she disappeared behind the double doors, Maddie turned to Bear and hugged him around the waist. He froze for a second, startled by the sheer trust of it. You saved her, she whispered. Bear patted her back with a gentleness that didn't match his size. No, sweetheart. You did. You were brave when it mattered. The three men who caused the problem were escorted away by real security once the system came back online. Leah gave her statement. So did the angels. Hours later, Maddie's mom was stable, sleeping peacefully with an oxygen mask. Maddie sat beside her, curled into Lee's side. Bear peeked in through the doorway. You two gonna be all right? He asked. Leah nodded. Thanks to you. Bear shrugged as if it were nothing. People like us, we don't show up for trouble. We show up for justice. Maddie ran to him and held out her stuffed rabbit. This is Mr. Bunn. He keeps people safe. I want you to have him. Bear blinked hard. I think Mr. Bunn should stay with you, kiddo. She shook her head. No. You keep him. For helping my mommy. He took the toy like it was made of gold. Then he whispered, I'll keep him safe. I promise. And with that, the angels rode off the same way they came, engines rumbling like thunder that guarded peace instead of breaking it. As Maddie watched them disappear into the night, she whispered to Leah, Are they angels for real? Leah smiled. Maybe not the kind with wings. But definitely the kind that show up when you need them.